Particularly warm, but after a chilly start, pleasant enough in the sunshine. 16 in Cardiff, 17 in Southampton, Hull, Lincoln down to Norwich, just 11 or 12 with the cloudier conditions here. That's going to feel pretty fresh. During this evening, that cloud may break up a little bit more over parts of eastern England before more cloud then comes in from the North Sea through the early hours. A bit more cloud developing across parts of Scotland as we go through the night as well, and that'll lead into a few more showers perhaps on Friday. Again, for most, it's dry and clear tonight, so again, gardeners take note. Frost is possible, certainly in rural areas over northern England, Wales, Northern Ireland and southern Scotland. Again, on Friday, tomorrow's looking fairly cloudy over eastern England, some sunny spells possible, and more cloud over northern and eastern Scotland. Could provide 1 or 2 scattered showers, but for the vast majority it's dry, and again, much of the west seeing blue skies, sunny spells, and feeling pretty pleasant in the sunshine. 16, 17, maybe 18 Celsius. Where it stays cloudy, we're only looking at temperatures just a little bit above double figures. High pressure hanging around then for the next few days, keeping things dry. Some wet weather in the northwest later on Saturday, but for many, the first day of the bank holiday weekend will stay dry and fine.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Oh, good morning, you lovely lot. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's, on your TV, radio and online. Flying solo again today. We are with you until midday. Massive show. I'm asking whether or not you think that actually this MP who's potentially been watching porn in the Commons has given himself a rather hard time. We're going to get stuck into that, for want of a better phrase. Also, should Prince Andrew be stripped of all of his titles? We've got the social care crisis, a little bit heavier on that front as well. And Keir Starmer, well, here are the receipts. So Keir's been calling for investigations left, right and centre, and now one might be about to come his way. Make sure you get in touch with your views. As usual, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We'll be getting to those throughout the show. But first, it's time for the latest news.
Thanks, Patrick. Good morning. It's 2 minutes past 10. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. A 28-year-old man's been charged with the murders of 4 people in southeast London. Joshua Jacques is accused of killing 3 generations of the same family. 64-year-old NHS worker Dolet Hill and her 59-year-old partner Denton Burke were stabbed in their home in Bermondsey on Monday. Her daughter Tanisha Foria-Kufo and granddaughter Samantha Drummonds were also attacked. Jacques is due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court. The Foreign Secretary says Western allies need to double down in their support for Ukraine, delivering heavy weapons, tanks and planes. The call came as Russia's President Vladimir Putin warned of a lightning-fast retaliation if countries interfere in the conflict. UK intelligence shows that around 20 Russian Navy vessels are still in the Black Sea, capable of striking targets on the Ukrainian coast. Liz Truss says it's time to stand up to Russian aggression.
Britain has always stood up to bullies. We've always been risk takers, so we are prepared to be bold. The war in Ukraine is our war. It's everyone's war, because Ukraine's victory is a strategic imperative for all of us. Heavy weapons, tanks, aeroplanes, digging deep in our inventories, ramping up production. We need to do all of this. My view is that inaction would be the greatest provocation. This is a time for courage, not for caution.
Liz Truss also urged allies to fully support Moldova to help the country maintain its sovereignty. It follows Ukrainian reports that Russia is ready to use the breakaway Moldovan region of Transnistria as a strategic position. The pro-Russian territory claims Ukraine fired at a village with an ammunition depot. Kiev's accused Moscow of trying to mastermind false flag attacks to destabilise the region. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg says the alliance is ready to help if needed.
Need for NATO to provide support to those countries in Europe that are not members of NATO, neither members of the European Union, as Moldova and Georgia. And this is about practical support, it's about political support.
Labour is calling for the suspension of a Conservative MP accused of watching porn in the House of Commons. The government chief whip has launched an investigation after allegations about the unnamed member were raised during a meeting of Tory MPs. Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary Jonathan Ashworth says the culture needs to change.
It's shocking, but for me it's also utterly depressing, because that building over there, that should be the arena, and it actually is still the arena where the big questions of the day are thrashed out, like this cost of living crisis and the fact that pensioners are really struggling. We should be talking about those issues in that building. And there is so much misogyny, sexism, bullying. We're hearing so many complaints. The culture has got to change.
Climate activists have damaged petrol pumps and blocked 2 motorway service stations. The Just Stop Oil protesters stopped motorists from entering forecourts at Cobham and Clackett Lane services on the M25. Around 35 people were involved. The group says it'll continue its disruption until the government agrees to end new oil and gas projects in the UK.
Doing this because currently the government doesn't care about our lack of futures, that inaction on the emergency, which is the climate crisis, is literally going to destroy lives in the next 10 to 20 years. It's going to be mass crop failure, mass drought, mass starvation, and because they're doing nothing, we are forced to cause disruption to make them listen. I don't want to be here. This is, not what I choose to do with my time, but I feel like I've run out of options.
Recruiters have joined equal pay campaigners to try and stop job applicants from being asked how much they've earned before. A recruitment and employment group says it's a simple way to ensure everyone's treated equally when applying for a position. Research shows that more than half of candidates feel that revealing previous earnings results in being offered a lower wage. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens now, though. It's back to Patrick with To The Point.
Yes, good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, on your TV, radio and online, and an absolutely massive show ahead to kickstart your day. A rip snorter, so here's what's coming up. The High Court has ruled that the government's policy of moving COVID patients into care homes at the start of the pandemic was unlawful. Why was this scandal ever allowed to happen? As Israel marks Holocaust Remembrance Day, violent anti-Semitism is on the rise across the world, including, sadly, right here in the UK. A new report says that there was a 78% increase in the number of physical attacks against Jews. I'll be asking what more needs to be done to tackle this hatred, and I'll also asking why is one form of racism deemed quotes-unquote better than another? But moving on from that, councillors in York have voted to strip Prince Andrew of the freedom of the city. What do you think about that? Should he lose all of his titles? Get in touch and let me know. We have all of that coming up and much, much more across the programme. You can get in touch, as always, gbviews@gbnews.uk. It really is all about you, so come on, get yourself on the airwaves. But first, I'll give my views on the quality or lack of our politicians. I think we deserve a better quality of politician. You used to look around the House of Commons and see genuine heavyweights on both sides, and I'm not just referring to Eric Pickles. It used to feel like if every member of one political party was eviscerated, that we'd be in at least relatively safe hands. There were elder statesmen who appeared to have at least an element of gravitas about them. Well, I just don't really see that anymore. We've got Porngate, an MP allegedly scrolling through naughty videos in the Commons chamber. He's supposed to be giving the opposition a hard time, not himself. Then we've got 56 MPs being investigated for sexual misconduct. That's nearly 9% of our elected officials. Then we've had claims of the Deputy Leader of the Opposition flashing her legs and potentially something else, and our Prime Minister during debates. Then obviously we've got the row about whether or not that really happened. The Speaker of the House essentially asking the editor of the Mail on Sunday to forego his right to a free press. We've had Partygate, rumours of number 11 briefing against number 10. We've got a leader of the opposition who is so dull and ineffective that he could bring a tear to a glass eye. If Keir Starmer recorded his life story and put it on Spotify, nobody will be able to tell you what happens after the second chapter, because we'd all be fast asleep. He spent the last few months banging on about cheese, wine and cake, calling for criminal prosecutions, taking the moral high ground. And then, lo and behold, it emerges that Sir Keir himself may well have broken COVID rules and regs, of course, as well, at a big booze-up in Durham. To be fair to Sir Keir, though, it wouldn't be the first time someone has faced criminal proceedings after drinking too much in Durham. You look at Labour's front bench and it's hardly inspiring, is it? Most of them aren't household names in their own homes, and many on the left are now obsessed with race, gender and sexuality. So obsessed with it they can barely talk about anything else. And the Tories have been ripping themselves apart. How many letters of no confidence have been submitted now? And this sorry state has been coming for a very, very long time. Successive governments have failed to get to grips with gas, oil and energy issues, which has meant that we're all skint now, struggling to pay the bills. We have hundreds and hundreds of MPs who blindly allowed us to wander into a cycle of lockdowns that crippled the economy and damaged our national mental health. Claudia Webb threatened to douse a woman with acid. Unfortunately, that was such a serious incident that it completely overshadowed all of the incredible work that she's done standing up for the people of Boris. I'm sure we all remember when it took years for the people that we elected, the people that we pay handsomely to do our bidding. It took them years to enforce the result of a democratic referendum. Shocking. We had a speaker who rampaged around the Commons, smashing phones, bullying, belittling and intimidating people. The dumpy despot, the dinky dictator. Or let's be fair, we could save ourselves a syllable and take the tater out of that, couldn't we? Splashing taxpayer money on expenses left, right and centre, turning our historic parliament into a backstreet Shakespeare tribute act. It just doesn't feel to me like we've got a good cohort of MPs. And I'm not surprised, really. It's becoming an increasingly sleazy industry full of cheap point scoring instead of real societal action. I can understand why many people wouldn't want that, but it creates a situation whereby the only people who do it are either idiots or narcissists. They say that you get the politicians you deserve. I disagree. I think many of our politicians don't deserve us. Yeah, let us know what you think about that. We're going to be returning to those views throughout the show. Are you disappointed with the calibre or lack of our current serving MPs and politicians? It does seem like a bit of a sewer at the moment in the House of Commons. Hey, maybe if you're a bit longer in the tooth than me, you might think it's always been like this. It's ever been thus. Let me know. Or actually, do you quite like the look of the people that we've got in there at the minute and why? GBviews@gbnews.uk. We're going to be returning, as I've said, to a lot of the issues raised in that opening statement there, especially Porngate, won't we? But on a much more serious note, to start the top of the show, of course, the High Court has ruled that the government broke the law by moving COVID patients into care homes at the start of the pandemic. Now, this legal action was taken against the government by two women, Kathy Gardner and Faye Harris, whose fathers both sadly died from COVID. So Dr. Gardner said, I'm quoting now, Matt Hancock's claim that the government threw a protective ring around care homes in the first wave of the pandemic was nothing more than a despicable lie of which he ought to be ashamed and for which he ought to apologise. I'm inclined to agree with that. Let us know what you think. Did you have any particular issues when it came to the care home sector at the start of the pandemic? For me, it's appeared, anyway, that the elderly were hung out to dry in some cases, like kind of dry kindling, really, at the start of the pandemic. I wouldn't be amazed, anyway, if a decision was made or if it emerged that a decision was made of basically who can die. And I think the idea that people were sent back out of NHS wards with coronavirus into a care home to surround themselves by some of the most vulnerable people, of course, in the country, I think was absolutely shocking, especially given the context that our Nightingale hospitals were all too often sitting there like giant expensive white elephants. But a spokesman for the former Health Secretary said that the High Court had found that he acted reasonably and he had been cleared of any wrongdoing. But, you know, there's a public judgment as well, isn't there? And joining us now is Labour's Shadow Care Minister, Karen Smith. Karen, thank you very much for joining us. Look, you know, I am not really known for Boris bashing or particularly usually kind of massively hanging the Tories out to dry or whatever, but I think the care home crisis, I was saying it from day one, was an absolute scandal. Just give me your views, please.
I would agree with that, and I think the families who have taken this action on behalf of so many other families, we've got to keep remembering them in our thoughts. We knew about asymptomatic transmission before lockdown. The real problem was that the undercapacity in the care system, which was present before the pandemic and is still there now, meant this rush to free up the hospitals meant that social care was an afterthought. That's been the case for some time. I think it's still the same case, and the real lesson needs to be learnt now by the government to make sure that the capacity is there, should anything like this ever happen again, to support those people, because the situation was awful at the time, and this judgment has really confirmed that.
Do you think that Matt Hancock made a decision that some elderly people could die?
I wouldn't think that any minister would make that conscious decision. What we need to understand is what advice he was getting and how that advice was used. We've heard, haven't we, from Mr Cummings over the years that it was chaotic at the Department of Health, but fundamentally we went into the pandemic with massive waiting list, undercapacity in the system, a really overstretched system running at over 90% capacity. They were warned about that. They were warned about that in reports called Operation Cygnus that tested the system before the pandemic, a report that was suppressed, and those lessons were not learnt before the pandemic, and I fear that they are still not being learnt now, and that's the thing we really need to focus on so that these families do have better answers.
You don't think it's symptomatic of the way that we treat the elderly in this country anyway? All too often you see elderly loneliness. We do have, I've said it before, I'll say it again, one element of, I think, British culture that I think we could learn from other cultures, right, is the way that we do treat our elderly. It's not uncommon in a lot of cultures to have grandma or the mother-in-law, bad news for Les Dennis, of course, but the mother-in-law living in your spare room as they grow old, and we don't really tend to do that here. Do you think this is symptomatic of the fact that all too often in Britain the elderly are an afterthought?
I don't think that's true for many families who choose a care home as an alternative to perhaps the home that they've lived in, and that home needs to be like the home they've come from. But also, we're not only talking about elderly people here, we're talking about adults with a disability that are also in care homes, and they often are an afterthought in this system as well. And we do know that the rates of death amongst people with a disability is also looking higher, and they also need to be considered in this discussion. But how we think about social care in the round and what happens to us as we all get older, or if we have a disability, that does need to be much more front and centre of all our politics. That includes housing that is fit for purpose for as we change our lives, and bringing together all of those parts of our public sector, really.
Yes, absolutely. It does look like no fun getting old, unfortunately, but there we go. Labour Shadow Care Minister Karen Smith, thank you very, very much for joining us. Right, let's get some reaction to that now with Simon Wallace. Look, we wanted to humanise this a bit. OK, you've got the political spin, you've got the result of this High Court case, but there are people who've been at the coalface of this from day dot. And Simon Wallace, Deputy Manager of St Cecilia's Nursing Home, is indeed one of those people. Simon, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all the work that you've done so far and no doubt as well during the pandemic. How bad was it when we saw people being sent back into care homes, etc., with COVID? What do you make of the decisions that were made there and the human cost?
Good morning, Patrick. Yeah, it's been pretty awful for us, as been widely portrayed in the media. But at the beginning of the pandemic, obviously nobody expected this to come. We knew it was coming from France and Spain, but the government still made us sort of sing happy birthday and wash our hands. It wasn't taken seriously enough. Certainly care homes, I believe, have been left out in the cold, as is the usual case. We were having people that were discharged to us without having testing, and sadly, although it cannot be proved completely, that it was brought into the home that way, and that people most likely lost their lives through that.
And you must have seen family members there and the way that they felt in the immediate aftermath of this issue. Just talk me through that.
It's been horrific for everybody, but I know that for the family members of the people that we had a lot of unexpected deaths just after the time of somebody being discharged to us without having a COVID test. I think what's more hurtful is that people could accept that people would die as a result of COVID. I think it's the untruths told by the government on their 6 o'clock briefings, by Matt Hancock in particular, by stating that there was this protective ring around care homes. Also that there was testing available for care homes. We didn't have testing until well after that point when he stated that, Patrick. OK. Now, I've been very wary and was very wary throughout the pandemic, certainly in the initial stages of it, which really we are kind of referring to here as COVID essentially first started to rip through care homes. Absolute chaos. We'd never really been confronted by a situation like this before, and it's perfectly understandable, in some cases, for mistakes to have been made, right? The deception over it, though, I think is really a key point. As you said, there wasn't a protective ring around care homes. In fact, they'd essentially injected COVID into care homes with the decisions that they'd made. But it is a bit of a tricky one, isn't it, really? Because for me, the big scandal of all of this is not just that people died, is that we forked out tens and tens and tens of millions of pounds for overflow hospital car parks, essentially, i.e. the Nightingale hospitals, which presumably could have housed the people that were sent into your care home and would have saved lives. What do you make about that? I think it's another blatant waste of money, Patrick. I don't think that many of the Nightingale hospitals had many people in it all, and they were utilised for different reasons other than that of COVID. We had a contract that was for 15 beds for people that were COVID positive coming out of hospital, while Nightingales were still up and running. But I know it was a big issue at the start that would Nightingale hospitals be able to be staffed? It's fine having the beds. But as we know, there's a mass shortage in the NHS, mass shortage in social care for staff, and is it physically possible that they would be able to staff those wards? OK. All right, well, look, good luck to you, all the best, and again, you know, thank you very much for all the hard work that you've done under incredibly difficult circumstances. It's been fantastic to have you on the show. So that was, of course, Simon Walls, Deputy Manager of St Cecilia's Nursing Home, just discussing this care home crisis. Did you have any personal experiences of the care home crisis? Did you have elderly relatives or potentially people you know with disabilities in a care home? How was the COVID situation in that care home? Do you blame anyone for it? Some people are saying, hey, look, this was really, really terrible government. This was deadly government, actually. They should never have done this. It was lazy. And there's even some insinuation that they could kind of judge who was more able to die, as it were, at the start. But, of course, some people go, well, hang on a minute, you know, it was carnage, it was chaos, and actually mistakes are made. GBViews at gbnews.uk. I want your views on it, and I want to hear from you if you have any direct
I suppose, experience of that particular issue. Now, after the break, there's been a 78% increase in violent attacks on Jews in the UK, this according to a new report. What more needs to be done to stop this? And I'm asking as well, why is it that one form of hatred, one form of racism in this country seems to be prioritised above all others? What could that possibly be? Hey, anyway, stay tuned.
Hello, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Another dry day for the vast majority today. Not particularly sunny. There is quite a lot of cloud around, but many places bright and fine. The thickest cloud across eastern England and northern Scotland. High pressure is sitting right across the UK and will bring the vast majority another dry day. But the cloud is thick in places, particularly over northern Scotland, where we could just have one or two showers. And it's quite a grey day for much of Yorkshire down into the Midlands and East Anglia. It'll take a while before that cloud starts to break up. Elsewhere, we've got quite a lot of cloud, but there's still some brightness coming through, some hazy sunshine for Wales, southern parts of England, the far north of England, southern Scotland. And if we do get some brightness, temperatures 15, 16, maybe 17, possibly 18 across the south, but feeling quite cold where that cloud persists over eastern England and northern Scotland. Still one or two showers to come across the Northern Isles through this evening, but they should tend to fade. And for most, it's going to be a dry night, a very small chance of a shower across the southeast. Clear skies for many, and temperatures will again be dropping well down into single figures. In rural spots over Northern Ireland, Northern England, again, we could be a couple of degrees below freezing to start Friday. So another chilly start and another fairly cloudy day over parts of eastern England, Lincolnshire and East Anglia in particular, but also across the southeast. Elsewhere, again, many places looking dry and bright with perhaps a bit more sunshine, but the cloud thickening up at times during the day over eastern Scotland, and we could just see one or two showers here during tomorrow. Again, temperatures responding to a bit of sunshine up to the mid or even high teens in places, feeling fairly pleasant after a chilly start. But again, parts of the east coast, especially where it stays glum, will be on the fresh side, to say the least. And temperature dropping away on Friday night, leading to a chilly start to the weekend. Bank holiday weekend as well. There will be some rain working into Scotland and Northern Ireland on Saturday. A few more showers around on Sunday, and generally staying on the cool side.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. It's 10:26. It's To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, right here on GB News Live, as ever on your TV, online and radio this morning. We got off to a bit of a fly there, so let's keep going, shall we? Now, today marks Yom HaShoah, which I'm sure I've thoroughly mispronounced, but I will be corrected on that in a minute, don't worry. A day of remembrance, OK, to the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust. Now, at around midday, the state of Israel will come to a complete and utter standstill for 2 minutes to honour the victims of the Holocaust. In a ceremony last night, the UK's chief rabbi, Ephraim Mervis, told survivors, and I'm quoting now, "We will continue to tell your stories. We will continue to convey your messages. What transpired during the Shoah will never happen again." Although, sadly, anti-Semitism is on the rise across, well, around the world, actually, but especially here in the UK, shockingly enough. According to a study by Tel Aviv University, the UK saw, get this, 78% increase in the number of physical assaults against Jews in 2021 compared to 2020. It's absolutely staggering stuff in this supposedly tolerant and inclusive country. Now, I'm joined in the studio by the wonderful Claudia Mendoza, the co-chief executive of the Jewish Leadership Council. Claudia, thank you so much. I would like to start by just saying I was told exactly how to pronounce this thing, and I'm terrible with things like this, so would you mind just correcting me for it, please?
Perfectly done.
Oh, there we go. Go away with that one. They're fine. But look, on to matters significantly more serious. Let's start with the meaning of this day amongst the Jewish community. What is it like, really?
So, as you mentioned, there was an event yesterday. I think it's a really, really important moment where the Jewish community can commemorate the death of 6 million Jews in the Holocaust. These were men, women, children, babies, and it's a moment to mark and to be able to say never again. So I think the report is very timely and very, very disturbing to be released on this day when, you know, we are saying never again, but ultimately we're hearing of increasing anti-Semitism across the world.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially here in the UK. We were just having a quick chat off air, weren't we? We've had the vile attack on a bus in Oxford Street recently, St John's Wood incident, sort of shouting all sorts of disgusting obscenities in a very heavily Jewish populated area. We've had marches of people going on the streets with police officers next to them shouting things like, "We want Jewish blood, we want Zionist blood." Police officers doing, it would appear anyway, precious little about that. Do you feel safe on the streets at the moment? Have you noticed any increase in a threat, as it were, do you think?
I feel personally safe, but I'm concerned about the bigger picture for the entire Jewish community. And the Community Security Trust's reports, the CST is a member of our organisation, the JLC, and they report year on year the number of anti-Semitic attacks and incidents in the UK. And as you say, 2021 saw the highest on record. So it's easy for me to say I feel safe walking down the street, but the wider picture is not that. 78% increase in violent assaults.
Staggering.
It's a staggering number and it's very concerning. And the Jewish community, especially after the May conflict between Israel and Gaza, felt extremely exposed, extremely vulnerable, and really felt a loss of confidence.
Yeah.
So this is definitely an issue which remains and needs to be tackled.
I used to live in North London, the Finchley area, quite a large Jewish community around there as well, of course, very close to Golders Green, and I would always be staggered when I was walking around there, you know, outside every single Jewish school or synagogue, there's security. Security. I didn't have that at my primary school, I didn't have that at my secondary school, I don't have that at my church. There clearly is a very, very visible threat here, isn't there? And that must be a very strange thing to live with.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I think being a member of the Jewish community, being in Jewish schools, going to communal buildings, going to synagogue on a weekly basis, the security becomes internalised. You actually don't even notice it. It's when people from outside of the community enter these buildings and they say, well, hang on a minute.
Yeah, it stands out.
Why have you got security guards? That it really rings home that we have internalised this, we've accepted it as normal, and it's not normal.
Yeah.
Thank God we have it. We have the excellent CST supported by the government, supported more broadly by the Jewish community, who are able to safeguard our organisations, our communal buildings, and it's because of them that we feel safe, but it's not something that we should take for granted, and it's not something we should accept as normal.
No, not at all. Do you think the police take anti-Semitism as seriously as they take things like Islamophobia, for example?
I think the police do take it seriously. I think the concern that the Jewish community has is that we're not seeing enough prosecutions for anti-Semitism.
Right.
The Jewish community needs to see anti-Semitism prosecuted consistently and forcefully. And I'm not sure that we're always seeing the CPS raise issues of anti-Semitism at that level.
I wonder whether or not it's almost a bit more tolerated. And I think there's potentially... I've spoken to various writers at the Jewish Chronicle, for example, about this in the past. And they say that they seem to think it stems from a lot of those lazy tropes about the Jewish community, potentially being in positions of power, this, that and the other. And actually, therefore, when there are elements of racism against them, it seems to almost... It's almost like people are punching up and not punching down. And that's just not really true, is it?
Well, correct. And I think, you're referring to, the now well-read and well-known book by David Baddiel, Jews Don't Count. There's this false myth, there's this myth that the Jewish community is powerful and privileged and white-presenting, and therefore they can't possibly be victims of racism. And that's explicitly not the case. And I think the point that we've been trying to make is, please don't diminish the threats and the prejudice that we face as a community. Don't diminish it to hierarchies. We are victims, and we want to be able to have the issues against us tackled.
Absolutely. Well, look, thank you so much for coming into the studio and for speaking up on this particular issue, and no doubt enlightening a lot of our viewers as well about the reality of what it's actually like as well at the moment in the Jewish community. So thank you so much. Absolutely tremendous to have you on the show. That's Claudia Mendoza there, of course, the co-chief executive of the Jewish Leadership Group. How do you feel about this, people? Do you think the police take anti-Semitism as seriously as they take things like Islamophobia, for example? Have you noticed an increase in anti-Semitism, whether or not you are Jewish? Have you just heard a bit more of it down the pub or seen a bit more of it on the streets? Get in touch, gbviews at gbnews.uk. But we're going to go to a quick break now. And councillors in York have voted to strip Prince Andrew of the freedom of the city. Tom Harwood has got the freedom of the City of London, actually. I wonder what it would take to get him stripped of it. Not that we should, of course, be considering that, but should actually Prince Andrew be stripped of all of his titles? What indeed does it mean to have the freedom of the city? I believe Harwood can drive sheep over Westminster Bridge. But before that, a look at this morning's news.
Good morning, it's 10:34. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. A 28-year-old man's been charged with the murders of 4 people in southeast London. Joshua Jacques is accused of killing 3 generations of the same family. 64-year-old NHS worker Dolette Hill and her 59-year-old partner Denton Burke were stabbed in their home in Bermondsey on Monday. Her daughter Tanisha Euphoria-Kufo and granddaughter Samantha Drummonds were also attacked. Jacques is due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court this morning. The Foreign Secretary says Western allies need to double down in their support for Ukraine, delivering heavy weapons, tanks and planes. The call came as Russia's President Vladimir Putin warned of a lightning-fast retaliation if countries interfere in the conflict. UK intelligence shows that around 20 Russian Navy vessels are still in the Black Sea, capable of striking targets on the Ukrainian coast. Labour's calling for the suspension of a Conservative MP accused of watching porn in the House of Commons. The government chief whip has launched an investigation after allegations about the unnamed member were raised during a meeting of Tory MPs. Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary Jonathan Ashworth says the culture needs to change.
It's shocking, but for me it's also utterly depressing, because that building over there, that should be the arena, and it actually is still the arena by where the big questions of the day are thrashed out, like this cost of living crisis and the fact that pensioners are really struggling. We should be talking about those issues in that building. And there is so much misogyny, sexism, bullying. We're hearing so many complaints. The culture has got to change.
Climate activists from Just Stop Oil have damaged petrol pumps and blocked 2 motorway service stations. Motorists were prevented from entering forecourts at Cobham and Clackett Lane services on the M25. The group says it will continue its disruption until the government agrees to end new oil and gas projects in the UK. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Stay with us. Patrick will be back in just a moment with To The Point.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, hello, everybody. It's 10:38. That first half hour whizzed by, so let's not stop now. Let's steamroll on through. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News Live, on your TV, online and radio this morning. Now, a Conservative MP has been referred to Parliament's Independent Complaints and Grievance Scheme after being accused of watching pornographic material actually in the House of Commons. So not one but two MPs complained about the same person, with one apparently trying to capture the offending MP, for want of a better phrase, in the act. So there we go. Well, joining me now to give us more about this and a roundup of some of the other stories as well in Westminster is our political correspondent, Tom Harwood. And Tom, thank you very much for joining me. Who'd have thought that you and I would end up talking about porn live on air? But here we are. So what's the latest?
It is the most extraordinary story that has been developing now over the course of 2 days. What happened on Tuesday evening was Conservative MPs met in one of the committee rooms in Parliament to air some grievances about particularly retaining Conservative female MPs in Parliament. The Conservative Party has massively increased the number of women who are represented in the House of Commons, but the number who leave Parliament after their first term is much higher than the number of men who leave. So they were talking about the culture in Westminster, and then one female Conservative MP stood up and said, "I've actually seen a male MP watching pornography in the House of Commons." And then a little later, a further female Conservative MP said the same thing. Now, there was a bit of confusion as to whether this was different MPs. How many MPs are watching pornography in the chamber? It turns out they were talking about the same individual, but this is an individual who has not been named. There have been a great deal of confusion as to whether this was someone who is a minister. The Prime Minister at Prime Minister's Questions yesterday suggested that if this person is a minister, is a front bencher, then the ministerial code would have been breached in this case, and it would apply and they'd lose their job. But currently the name is not public. It was referred to first the Chief Whip of the Conservative Party, Chris Heaton-Harris, who then himself referred it to the Independent Parliamentary Complaints Commission, whereby more process will have to undergo. It's quite a secretive and sometimes a long-winded process that will require people submitting evidence independently to that process. But that's where we are at this stage.
Just taking out all the moral issues with this, it's quite a bold move, isn't it, inside the House of Commons, potentially on the front bench?
Well, this is what makes it so perturbing, because what we're seeing here is a situation whereby MPs MPs where this is the place where they're supposed to work. This is one of the most public spaces in the country, one of the most photographed and videoed rooms in the country, and indeed a room whereby there are press and members of the public sitting above those benches, looking down at those MPs. I sit there above the opposition benches mostly so that I can look across at the government benches and see what's going on there. And so as I sit above those opposition benches, I can see what people are doing on their phones. It's the same for people opposite in the press gallery that sort of acts as a horseshoe around that end of the House of Commons. So really, if someone was watching pornography on their phone on those green benches, that's an incredibly brazen move and potentially suggests it's something that one of these people was almost sort of daring other people to look. And that's one of the most disturbing things about it. Was this person incidentally looking at it? Was this something that happened to be messaged to someone? Was this an incidental thing? Or was this something more worrying? Was this someone who was in effect getting off at the idea
deviant
that others may be looking to?
Yeah, potentially. Well, we'll have to wait and see, and no doubt the truth will come out eventually, as it were, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Nothing perturbing, of course, about your report there, Tom, I must say. What else is going on in the Commons at the minute? You might as well give us another couple of hits on this. I mean, Keir Starmer, for example, banging on, although I probably shouldn't use those phrases given the subject matter of our previous conversation, but talking about beer, cheese, wine, gatherings, criminal investigations. Well, hang on a minute, Keir, what did you do in Durham?
Well, this is the big point, is it not? That Keir Starmer has stood at the dispatch box in the House of Commons on so many occasions, spoken about the sacrifices that people made, about the lack of social contact, about the rules that the people of Britain followed, saying about the true British values of following those rules, of respecting those rules, and speaking about how rule makers, those who legislate for those rules, cannot break those rules. Well, Keir Starmer is a rule maker. He's a legislator. He voted for these rules and indeed pressed the government to go further and harder on these rules on so many occasions, which means the situation in April 2021, when indoor mixing was banned, when the Queen sat alone at the funeral of her husband, the idea that he was having a social, potentially, with colleagues, in what he describes as a work event, but a work event where he is pictured drinking beer with members of the Durham constituency Labour Party. It raises some very serious questions.
Well, it's almost a mirror image of some of the things that Boris Johnson was accused of. When is a work event not a work event? When does it turn into a social gathering? Is it the moment you crack open a beer? Is it the moment you crack open a glass of wine? Are they sat there talking about policy? If you are listening to us on radio, it's basically just pictures. I'm sure you've all seen it right now. Video, in fact, of Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, there in what looks to be a semi-busy office with a beer. I mean, is that not the same or similar to some of the things that Boris Johnson was being accused of?
Well, this is the point. Boris Johnson has so far only been fined for one event. So we can leave aside everything else that has been discussed, and there are many other events across Whitehall with civil servants, with special advisors, and indeed some allegedly with the Prime Minister. We can leave those aside and look at the thing for which the Prime Minister and indeed the Chancellor has been fined, and that is having what was determined to be a social event in the Cabinet room before a meeting, one that involved cake in a Tupperware box and the singing of Happy Birthday. Now, it sounds trivial in the case of people who in the case of normal life, but at the time at which it happened, some people would argue that this was a beyond the pale event, despite the fact that a similar thing happened 3 hours earlier at a school that Boris Johnson visited, where he was sang Happy Birthday by the children and given a cake by the teachers. That to one side, it didn't matter to the police. They had a very low bar for criminality in this case, a low bar by which they issued their fixed penalty notice. If the same low bar is to be applied in other events, well, it raises big questions because, as the Daily Mail has been reporting today, on their front page, of course, police review over Starmer's lockdown drinks. It's something that I first reported yesterday. They have also reported in their pages of the Daily Mail today a Facebook advert. An advert for a pub quiz and social. Here it is.
There you go,
quiz, not pub, just CLP, Constituency Labour Party, quiz and social. Friday the 30th of April, 7 p.m. Friends and family welcome. Now, they do mention a Zoom link in there as well, so I assume there's a virtual element to this. But clearly, members of the CLP meeting that very evening, at that very time, at an event that was advertised on Facebook for that time, was a quiz and social. Indeed, the Labour MP for Durham at that time had shared the event talking about some sort of booze up.
Exactly, a greasy night.
A greasy night, that's exactly her words. So if that's the case, if this was advertised by members of the constituency Labour Party at the time, are we expected to believe that it's just a coincidence that at that time was when Keir Starmer took a break in his normal work day at a work event? That is what the Labour Party is asking us to do, to believe it in that coincidence.
Thank you very much. Tom Harwood there, of course, our political correspondent. I suppose maybe one get-out-of-jail-free card for the Labour Party would be that if Keir Starmer is at any event, it can't be a party because he's so dull. Right, OK, councillors in York have voted unanimously to strip Prince Andrew of the freedom of the city. Actually, hang on a minute. We've got Tom Harwood here. Just quickly, sorry about this. You have got the freedom of the City of London.
I do.
What does that actually mean? Have you driven sheep over Westminster Bridge yet?
I have not yet driven sheep over the London Bridge.
Oh, it's London Bridge, sorry.
But I have spoken to someone who has. Another freeman of the City of London is Michael Portillo. And upon my receiving of the freedom of the city, he texted me to say, look at this. And it was a clip where he had driven not one, but a herd of sheep over London Bridge. And it made me incredibly jealous. So I aspire to one day do that. I don't know what the freedom of the City of York allows you to do, however. Are you able to drive sheep into York? I'm not sure. That's one to look into.
Well, we're about to find out. Thank you very much, Tom Harwood there, a freeman. Now, the move comes in the wake... This is about Prince Andrew now being stripped of the freedom of the City of York. The move comes in the wake of his out-of-court settlement with Virginia Giuffre, with many now calling for the Prince to be stripped of his Duke of York title. Our reporter Anna Riley went to the meeting in York where the vote took place.
On Wednesday evening, City of York councillors voted to strip the Duke of York, Prince Andrew, of his Freedom of the City honour given to him in 1987. The honorary freedom is bestowed by the city to recognise notable service by local residents, to distinguish people and to royalty. But after the sexual assault case brought against Prince Andrew by Virginia Giuffre, which was settled out of court, councillors decided it would no longer be appropriate for him to hold the honour. Councillor Darryl Smalley, City of York Council Executive Member for Culture, Leisure and Communities, told GB News this vote took place to protect the city's reputation.
So I proposed the motion to remove the honorary freedom today, just to distance York from Prince Andrew. I think we've had many months now of our city being linked with him as those allegations came out, as the court case rumbled on, and the subsequent reaction to it. And we're only acting in a similar way to the Queen. The Queen recognised that he was doing reputational damage to those military patronages and other honours and positions that he held, and so it's only right that as a City Council we act as well. We're doing great work in trying to end violence against women and girls and tackle misogynistic hate crime. It feels at odds that we're doing all that work and then at the same time having someone, an ambassador of our city, with serious allegations against his name, and so that's why we felt the need to act in the way we have.
Prince Andrew relinquished his honorary military titles and his HRH style in January, following the sexual assault claims that were brought against him. Now, after removing his Honour of the City title, councillors here in York say the next logical step is for Buckingham Palace and for the government to remove Prince Andrew's Duke of York title in order to sever all links that the Prince has with the city. Anna Riley, GB News, York.
Well, another bitter blow for Prince Andrew there. Well, joining me in the studio for more reaction is our very own royal reporter. It's the wonderful Cameron Walker. Cameron, thank you so much. Right, so I mean, yes, another blow.
It is another blow for Prince Andrew. It's just the latest in a long list of things which he has had to give up. He's had to give up. He's been stripped of his honorary military roles, his patronages, even his favourite golf course in Fife.
No.
He's lost membership of that. Yeah, the Royal and Ancient Golf Club of St Andrews in Fife is what he has lost. And last night, as Anna was saying, that vote, he has lost the freedom of the City of York. For those who don't know, he settled an out-of-court civil sex case earlier this year with a lady called Virginia Giuffre, who was suing him for alleged sexual assault assaults when she was a teenager. It's something Prince Andrew has always denied. But, you know, one of the councillors that last night who proposed this motion is now calling for him to be stripped of his Duke of York title. Now, that's a very hard thing to do because it isn't as simple as a vote as it was last night.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm not exactly sure of what the process would have to be there, but is it quite unlikely to happen? I mean, the Queen showed a very, very public solidarity with him at Prince Philip's memorial. So realistically, he's still quite well regarded. Is he with the Queen, for example?
Well, perhaps. I think, you know, they definitely still see each other in private. But to remove the Duke of York title, it requires an Act of Parliament. So it would have to go through both houses, House of Commons, House of Lords, and then get royal assent from Her Majesty the Queen herself.
Oh, that's an awkward one, isn't it?
So I suppose it got very awkward, and I think the question now is, do MPs feel as strongly as York City councillors suggested they did last night? My best guess is probably not. It's the year of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, but they really want to cause such controversy.
Probably not, really, no. And you can imagine it being quite a dark day for her to have to sign off on that for her own son.
Yeah, and also let's not forget Prince Andrew has denied all of this. In the out-of-court settlement, there was no liability, no admission of guilt in that out-of-court settlement. So, you know, perhaps if you're talking about innocence until proven guilty, he is, in the eyes of the law and everything else, innocent.
Well, this is it, isn't it? And there are several viewers, GBViews at gbnews.uk, don't be shy, get in touch, whatever your views are on this, who do think exactly that. I get emails all the time to say that, you know, officially he's done nothing wrong, as they say. And so actually, is this now a little bit of a witch hunt? I do think possibly a more common view among the public is that, you know, he's not emerged particularly well from all of this. But Cameron, thank you very, very much. As always, we'll be seeing you back on the show shortly, no doubt. Cameron Walker there, our royal reporter. But I want to whiz you through some of the headlines of the day that you might have missed, OK? So really kind of put the full stop on this hour. Now, glamour model Katie Price has been warned by a judge that she could face up to 5 years in jail if she continues her reckless behaviour. Frankly, she's quite lucky not to be there right now. The star appeared at Crawley Magistrates Court on Wednesday, where she denied breaching a restraining order against her ex-husband's fiancé over a message in which she accused the pair of having an affair. She was banned from contacting her ex directly or indirectly in 2019 under the terms of a 5-year restraining order. It's never a dull moment with Katie Price, is it? What are your views on Katie? I suppose, like her or loathe her, she managed to keep herself in the news one way or another, hasn't she? But there we go. A removal team in Darmstadt, Germany, were told to clear out the contents of a bedsit by a bailiff. So they removed the tenant's TV, they removed the sofa, the books, the clothes, and, of course, his life-size first aid training dummy. All these objects were duly stashed in storage, awaiting pickup by the missing tenant. But just a couple of months later, the bailiff noticed a foul smell emitting from the storage unit, and that the first aid dummy had turned a peculiar green. And it turns out the life-size first aid training dummy was in fact the fully clothed body of 58-year-old tenant Andreas B., who appeared to have died in the bedsit without anyone noticing, least of all the bailiff. That is one of the most bizarre stories I've ever read out on the news. So thank you very much to whoever's managed to source that. That's nuts. Anyway, Transformers star and 2000 sex symbol Megan Fox has confessed that she enjoys drinking her fiancé's blood as part of a ritual. So the rapper turned pop-punk sensation Machine Gun Kelly and the 35-year-old actress got engaged earlier this year, drinking each other's blood to mark the occasion. What's wrong with just a normal white wedding? You know, I think, can you imagine, how was Meghan and Machine Gun's wedding, for a start, by the way? So we're already in those realms, aren't we? You are now at the wedding of Machine Gun and Meghan, it would say in the entrance to that, wouldn't it? And then you get there and you go, well, the wedding was all right, yeah, no, it was nice. String quartet, she looked lovely, her dad giving her away, a couple of tears, very emotional. I think they drank each other's blood at the altar. Bonkers. Anyway, it turns out, obviously, that wasn't a one-off. She still does this to this day. She joins the likes of Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton, who wore vials of each other's blood on a necklace when they were married in the early 2000s. You kind of just think, though, that maybe, you know, should someone be having a closer look at this? It's not that normal, is it? But anyway, keep all your thoughts coming into us on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. And we're going to go right in there right now to the terrifying world of my inbox. Loads of you getting in touch. So, yes, initially, for months, Boris Johnson has had his nose constantly rubbed in the dirt by... Now, these are the views of John. A smug and superior Keir Starmer over Partygate, and Boris Johnson has repeatedly and humbly apologised without complaint. It now transpires that Keir Starmer is probably guilty of breaking the rules as well. Obviously, we'll have to see what the inquiry does. And, yeah, basically saying that Keir Starmer's a bit of a hypocrite there, and those are John's views, and it's difficult to disagree with it. Bernard Carney has been in touch about Prince Andrew. He thinks it's a witch hunt against Prince Andrew. I imagine Geoffrey would disagree. In fact, we know that she certainly does. How do you feel at home? There is actually quite a lot of support for Prince Andrew there. And Dawn getting in touch about my opening statement, which is about the quality, or should I say lack of our elected officials, the 650 people who we pay quite handsomely to do our bidding in the House of Commons. It emerges, doesn't it? We've had Partygate, look, we've had number 11 allegedly briefing against number 10 and vice versa. We've now got Beergate, we've got Porngate, there's so many gates, you can't move for gates. But anyway, yes, very disappointed with the current lack of standard in the levels of our politicians, this is Dawn. Most noticeably, behaved like three-year-olds, having tantrums to get their own way on a number of issues since 2016. That's Dawn's view. I'm inclined to agree with you, Dawn. I've been very, very disappointed on numerous different occasions by the lack of calibre of our MPs, taking them years to enact the result of a democratic referendum, the stroppy speaker, his little reign of terror around the Commons, the inaction of people like Theresa May, for example, the poor calibre of opposition. It's never-ending. And then, of course, you've got scandals, you've got sleaze. Our House of Commons is a little bit of a sewer, isn't it? But we'll be back with more on today's top stories and plenty of your views after this very short break. So don't you dare go anywhere, people.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Oh, morning all. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, on your TV, radio and online. Where on earth did that first hour go? Hey, I'm with you all the way through until midday with the show jam-packed of all of today's biggest stories. Lots of discussion, expert guests and, of course, your opinions as well. We've got the lot of it here, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Porngate, we've got Beergate, we had a little bit of Partygate. Of course, we've got a lot more serious issues as well. What's the very latest in Ukraine? Do you believe that mad, bad Vlad would actually nuke us? Because certainly some noises are coming out about that. Make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual. GBViews at gbnews.uk. But first, time for your latest headlines. Let's do it.
Thank you, Patrick. Good morning. It's just gone 11 o'clock. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. A 28-year-old man's been charged with the murders of 4 people in southeast London. Joshua Jacques is accused of killing 3 generations of the same family. 64-year-old NHS worker Dolette Hill and her 59-year-old partner Denton Burke were stabbed in their home in Bermondsey on Monday. Her daughter Tanisha Foria-Kufo and granddaughter Samantha Drummonds were also attacked. Jacques is due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court. A man has appeared in court accused of the murder of a missing mother of 2 in Lancashire. Police are still searching for Katie Kenyon, who disappeared last Friday after she was seen getting into a van in Burnley. More than 60 specialist officers are scouring a remote forest in the east of the country. 50-year-old Andrew Burfield was remanded in custody and will appear at Preston Crown Court tomorrow. The Foreign Secretary says Western allies need to double down in their support for Ukraine, delivering heavy weapons, tanks and planes. The call came as Russia's President Vladimir Putin warned of a lightning-fast retaliation if countries interfere in the conflict. UK intelligence shows that around 20 Russian Navy vessels are still in the Black Sea, capable of striking targets on the Ukrainian coast. Liz Truss says it's time to stand up to Russian aggression.
Britain has always stood up to bullies. We've always been risk takers, so we are prepared to be bold. The war in Ukraine is our war. It's everyone's war, because Ukraine's victory is a strategic imperative for all of us. Heavy weapons, tanks, aeroplanes, digging deep in our inventories, ramping up production. We need to do all of this. My view is that inaction would be the greatest provocation. This is a time for courage, not for caution.
Liz Truss also urged allies to fully support Moldova to help the country maintain its sovereignty. It follows Ukrainian reports that Russia's ready to use the breakaway Moldovan region of Transnistria as a strategic position. The pro-Russian territory claims Ukraine fired at a village with an ammunition depot. Kiev's accused Moscow of trying to mastermind false flag attacks to destabilise the region. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg says the alliance is ready to help if needed.
Need for NATO to provide support to those countries in Europe that are not members of NATO, neither members of the European Union, as Moldova and Georgia. And this is about practical support, it's about political support.
In other news, Labour's calling for the suspension of a Conservative MP accused of watching porn in the House of Commons. The government chief whip has launched an investigation after allegations about the unnamed member were raised during a meeting of Tory MPs. Shadow Work and Pension Secretary Jonathan Ashworth says the culture needs to change.
It's shocking, but for me it's also utterly depressing, because that building over there, that should be the arena, and it actually is still the arena where the big questions of the day are thrashed out, like this cost of living crisis and the fact that pensioners are really struggling. We should be talking about those issues in that building. And there is so much misogyny, sexism, bullying. We're hearing so many complaints. The culture has got to change.
Climate activists have damaged petrol pumps and blocked 2 motorway service stations. The Just Stop Oil protesters stopped motorists from entering forecourts at Cobham and Clackett Lane services on the M25. Around 35 people were involved. The group says it'll continue its disruption until the government agrees to end new oil and gas projects in the UK.
Doing this because currently the government doesn't care about our lack of futures, that inaction on the emergency, which is the climate crisis, is literally going to destroy lives in the next 10 to 20 years. It's going to be mass crop failure, mass drought, mass starvation, and because they're doing nothing, we are forced to cause disruption to make them listen. I don't want to be here. This is, not what I choose to do with my time, but I feel like I've run out of options.
And recruiters have joined equal pay campaigners to try and stop job applicants from being asked how much they've earned before. A recruitment and employment group says it's a simple way to ensure everyone's treated equally when applying for a position. Research shows that more than half of candidates feel that revealing previous earnings results in being offered a lower wage. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, let's return to Patrick and to the point.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's, on your TV, radio and online. I've got an absolute cracker of a show lined up for you, so here's what's coming up in the final hour. I'll be bringing you the latest on the government's bundled passport renewal process, that's right, as families tell of months-long delays costing them their entire holidays. That's if they can even get through airport security these days, frankly. So, when can you expect a new passport? How much will it cost? I've got a couple of passport-related stories that I'll delve into as well. I do not emerge well from either of them. The government has launched a £25 million fraud squad to attempt to recover the billions of pounds that have been lost in COVID loan scams. That's right. Some people saw a pandemic and saw a financial opportunity and decided to run with it. As we all receive a little less in our paychecks this month, I'll ask, how was this misuse of public money actually allowed to happen, and who's going to pay for it? Probably us, I imagine it usually is. And finally, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is looking to cut the cost of childcare by reviewing the ratio of staff to children at nursery schools. Now, this is interesting, OK? It's actually, frankly, a lot more interesting than it sounds, because this will actually essentially increase the number of children in classes and in nursery schools. Is that safe for them? Is that better for their early years development? We're going to be talking about all of that. Will it help working parents with the cost of living squeeze? I've got all of that coming up and much, much more across the programme. I'm also asking you whether or not you feel fundamentally let down and disappointed by the low class of MP in this country. We've got sleaze, we've got scandal, we've got incompetence, and now maybe we've got porn as well. Get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Right, let's get cracking. MPs have called for a major overhaul of the way clinical negligence claims are handled in England, as the current system is not fit for purpose. Shocking figures, by the way, about how much the NHS pays out basically to say sorry for mistreating you, OK? The compost scheme is absolutely astonishing. Check this out, ladies and gents. The NHS compensation system costs more than £2 billion a year. That's a lot of mistakes, isn't it? That's if you can even get to hospital, fighting your way through these waiting lists. The Health and Social Care Committee say the need to prove individual fault should be scrapped, with focus instead being placed on whether the wider NHS system has failed the doctors responsible. No, I disagree with that. We'll get stuck into it in a second, though. It also set out new measures for faster payments while reducing costs to the health service. But patient group Action Against Medical Accidents said the best way the system can be overhauled is if the NHS goes through a fundamental culture change and admit when something has gone wrong. I've got some direct experience of this. Joining us now is Dr Lawrence Gurlis, the CEO of and GP at Same Day Doctor, who will forever be known on this show as the man who called Omicron right, actually. £2 billion a year on NHS compensation surely highlights how much reform is needed in the NHS. A lot of people now will not have a lot of faith in our NHS. They won't maybe necessarily be able to see their GP regularly. They might not necessarily be able to go and get an operation quickly. And now, if that operation goes wrong, well, frankly, goodness gracious me, it seems to be going wrong rather a lot, doesn't it?
Well, Patrick, £2 billion a year, as you say, and that the NHS acts as its own insurance company. So that money just comes straight out of the same pot that the care comes from. You know, there's no way the NHS can claim that back from their insurers. It's a lot of money, and what I would like to do is reduce the negligence by making changes to the health service so doctors are less tired, less overworked, make fewer mistakes, have more time for their patients. And that would bring down these negligence claims. You also have to remember quite a lot of the high-value negligence claims relate to obstetrics, relate to childbirth. And we've seen a couple of scandals recently because people pursued this idea that a natural childbirth is better than a caesarean. And I think if we focus mainly on obstetrics, because obviously the payouts to a child that has been injured are very large indeed, we should focus on obstetrics, improve that side of things, and that would reduce costs. As far as a no-fault compensation scheme is concerned, people have talked about this for a long time. The trouble with that is that it means you don't have to prove anyone did anything wrong. You could have just been unlucky.
Yes. Just sorry to interrupt, but this is exactly the point I wanted to get you on, actually, just to interject at this particular moment, because without going into too many specifics, I had a member of my family who was essentially given absolutely shockingly bad care, and the ultimate result there was death, right? And when it went through the due process of it all, you know, the pushing of blame, the systems, it's a system's fault. Actually, realistically, it was one bloke's fault. And as far as we're aware, I don't think he ever particularly paid the price for that. It is important, I think, to identify the individual involved and not let them hide behind so what will sometimes be very genuine structural issues. But actually, you've got to have accountability, haven't you? I want someone to blame.
Yeah, look, without a doubt. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but you have to understand these things. If there is an obvious negligence, the NHS or the insurance companies that back the doctors would not defend that case. They would settle if it's obvious. The problem is you do get false claims and you do get things that go wrong that are actually no fault of anyone at all. It's just bad luck. And the only way to prove a claim is by the adversarial method. We have common law in this country, and to prove it would have to be under cross-examination with barristers representing each side, and that's where the legal fees come in. I don't see how you can change that without changing our entire legal system. That's part of the problem with this type of thing.
Does the NHS try and cover up doctors' mistakes ever, do you think?
There have been accusations that they're slow to deal with things at the early stages. I think there has, in some cases, been element. The reality is, where there is a barn door mistake that's been made and barn door negligence, they will settle. I've seen lots of cases settle out of court. Sometimes it can take a couple of years to get to that point. But if someone's got a genuine claim, they will get compensation, there's no doubt. But you have to be patient, and you may have to engage a no-win, no-fee lawyer, which is the way these things work. Genuine mistakes which are caused by someone do receive the right compensation. But there are a lot of people that are just angry and upset and want to blame the doctors at the hospital when actually no one's done anything wrong.
I can understand that completely, especially if you've lost a loved one, for example. You do want someone to blame, and there's possibly a whole range of psychological reasons behind that. You know, the anger, the denial, You can see why they want to point the finger at someone, and I do get that. Look, I don't want to give too much of a one-sided account of this. There are times, no doubt, as you alluded to, where doctors or nurses are absolutely knackered, and that the system has essentially let them down, and they are put in a position where they're more likely to make a mistake. So it's not always the fact that they're rubbish at their job and then try to blag their way out of it, is it?
No, listen, a system under pressure, a GP's being very busy. You see 100 people with headaches. How's a GP going to work out which one of those has a brain tumour and which ones don't? It's very, very hard. And that's unfortunately the way the system is in this country. And also in the hospitals, they're, accident and emergency departments, they're very busy, they're understaffed, people kept waiting. So the system itself is far from ideal in preventing negligence, and I would want to prevent negligence. That's good for doctors, it's good for patients, and it will save, hopefully, a lot of this £2 billion per annum if we just find ways of reforming the system, which is a conversation I'm happy to have another time, because I've got lots of ideas about how to do that.
OK, fantastic. Dr Lawrence Shirless, thank you so much. The CEO of and GP at Same Day Doctor. And in case you're wondering what I referenced, the Omicron-related thing with him earlier on was when Omicron first announced itself on the scene, when Omicron just dropped, he was the one who said, basically, this could actually be like a vaccine. If it's milder and if it's more contagious, this could be one of the answers to us getting out of the coughy, sneezy woods. And he was the first person I heard say that. He said it right here on this very show. And he was right about that. So there we go. I think it's always worth a listen then when Dr Lawrence Shirless talks. Now, there's a lot going on in the world of politics at the moment. We've got beer, we've got parties, we've got porn. But enough about Saturday now. OK, fair enough. Well, earlier this morning, GBNews heard from Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Jonathan Ashworth, who gave his thoughts on the current political issues hitting the headlines.
This story about somebody, a Conservative MP, apparently watching porn on his phone. I mean, it's shocking. Whoever he is, they've got to. I mean, I think they should suspend him, frankly. I mean, if they know who he is, don't put it into this other investigation. Suspend him from the Conservative Party. The thing is, it's shocking, but for me, it's also utterly depressing, because that building over there, that should be the arena, and it actually is still the arena by where the big questions of the day are thrashed out, like this cost of living crisis and the fact that pensioners are really struggling. We should be talking about those issues in that building. And there is so much misogyny, sexism, bullying. We're hearing so many complaints. The culture has got to change. Keir was in between meetings on Zoom calls. I think that's completely different to Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, who wrote the rules to put us all into lockdown, of course, imposed the rules, told us we had to stick to the rules. And in Downing Street, I think there's been something like 50 fines now, and there could be even more fines. So Boris Johnson has really overseen a culture of rule breaking in his own Downing Street offices and home. So I don't think the two are comparable. But I understand why Tory MPs are preoccupied with this. So as I understand, on the particular point about that quiz, there was not a social event that Keir Starmer attended. There wasn't a quiz that he attended. So that is, that is, as I understand it, that didn't happen. There was no socialising in person at a quiz, as I understand it. But look, the police have looked into this, and I do not think it's comparable to Boris Johnson, who wrote the rules, set the rules, told us that we all couldn't see our loved ones, etc., and the 50 fines in Downing Street that he has overseen. But it's up to the police. These things are a matter for the police. The police have looked into it, but it's up to them to. These are their decisions. The pension was supposed to rise in line with something called the triple lock. That was supposed to guarantee a reasonable increase year by year. Boris Johnson broke that promise on the triple lock, and actually, because of where inflation is, he's now just imposed the biggest real terms cut in the pension for 50 years. For those pensioners who want to carry on working beyond the age of 65, and some do, because they want to work a bit flexibly because they still want to have some employment, they're now going to be paying this big Rishi Sunak national insurance rise as well on that income for the first time, or a proportion of it. And when you combine that with the energy bills, retirees are really worse off. And of course, when you're retired, you're on a fixed income. And I was in Wolverhampton yesterday talking to pensioners, and I was talking to someone from a food bank, and he was telling me more and more elderly people are turning up at food banks. They feel very embarrassed because they're often very proud. They don't want to be asking for handouts. But for the first time now, or that our food banks are seeing huge numbers or bigger numbers of pensioners and elderly people, which they never used to get before. So I really think pensioners have been betrayed by Boris Johnson, and pensioner poverty is rising again in this country. Well, they shouldn't have broken that triple lock rise in the pension. That's the first thing. The second thing is you can do something about these heating bill. The triple lock should come back, and at the moment they're saying they're going to bring it back, but we'll wait and see because they've broken so many promises. But let's see whether they do bring it back in the future.
What a load of absolute codswallop some of that was, hey? I mean, can you get the way that Labour are actually treating these latest Keir Starmer revelations? There is a video of Keir Starmer appearing to drink a beer for, one would imagine, some length of time. Keir Starmer had been in that room supposedly just nipping in between Zoom calls. Well, if the rules are the rules, then you don't nip into a room to have a beer with your colleagues at what is actually described on the advert for that event as a social event, because that would presumably be breaking the rules. You know, it's like me saying, I'm just going to nip to the pub. Well, you don't do that if you're not allowed to nip to the pub at that particular time of day. I find that absolutely astonishing. In fact, it wasn't just the advert for that event that referred to it as a social. Indeed, one of the people involved said, come along for a, quote, greasy night, which is a booze-up, apparently. How do you compare that to cake in a Tupperware box before a cabinet meeting after being presented with another cake by a group of school children at a visit to a primary school? I think those two things are completely different. And the argument there that just because Boris Johnson is the one who made the rules, that he has to be held to a higher standard. Well, we're all equal before the law, aren't we? And I would have thought that Keir Starmer, as the former head of the CPS, would have been aware of that. What do you think now? Is it all going to go quiet over there, as it were? Do you think that Keir Starmer is going to go back in his box a bit over Partygate? Does he regret bringing this all up, frankly? I really hope now that this is the full stop on what has been a petty political scandal. Partygate rumbling on and on and on and on. You're sick of it, I'm sick of it. People living on the moon will be sick of it by now. And hopefully, now that there's been some kind of allegation at least thrown the other way, maybe we can all just move on. But we'll have to wait and see, won't we? Anyway, after the break, more on the bungling passport renewal process as the backlog hits 500,000 people. Are you planning on going away anytime soon? I hope you've got your passport, because if you haven't, you're staying at home. Up next, it's your weather.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update. Another dry day for the vast majority today. Not particularly sunny. There is quite a lot of cloud around, but many places bright and fine. The thickest cloud across eastern England and northern Scotland. High pressure is sitting right across the UK and will bring the vast majority another dry day. But the cloud is thick in places, particularly over northern Scotland, where we could just have 1 or 2 showers. And it's quite a grey day for much of Yorkshire, down into the Midlands and East Anglia. It'll take a while before that cloud starts to break up. Elsewhere, we've got quite a lot of cloud, but there's still some brightness coming through, some hazy sunshine for Wales, southern parts of England, the far north of England, southern Scotland. And if we do get some brightness, temperatures 15, 16, maybe 17, possibly 18 across the south, but feeling quite cold where that cloud persists over eastern England and northern Scotland. Still 1 or 2 showers to come across the Northern Isles through this evening, but they should tend to fade. And for most, it's going to be a dry night, a very small chance of a shower across the southeast. Clear skies for many, and temperatures will again be dropping well down into single figures. In rural spots over Northern Ireland, Northern England, again, we could be a couple of degrees below freezing to start Friday. So another chilly start and another fairly cloudy day over parts of eastern England, Lincolnshire and East Anglia in particular, but also across the southeast. Elsewhere, again, many places looking dry and bright with perhaps a bit more sunshine, but the cloud thickening up at times during the day over eastern Scotland, and we could just see 1 or 2 showers here during tomorrow. Again, temperatures responding to a bit of sunshine up to the mid or even high teens in places, feeling fairly pleasant after a chilly start. But again, parts of the east coast, especially where it stays glum, will be on the fresh side, to say the least. And temperature dropping away on Friday night, leading to a chilly start to the weekend. Bank holiday weekend as well. There will be some rain working into Scotland and Northern Ireland on Saturday. A few more showers around on Sunday, and generally staying on the cool side.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Every
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Yes, well, we're rattling through here. It's already 11:26. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's, right here on GB News Live, as ever, on your TV, online and radio this morning. Now, an issue that I'm sure will be affecting quite a lot of you, well, 500,000 of you to be exact, is the backlog of 500,000 British passports, with COVID delays and a recruitment crisis being blamed. As Downing Street Chief of Staff Steve Barclay meets the Passport Office leadership over the next few days, our reporter Rosie Wright is at the Passport Office getting people's reactions. Good morning, Rosie. Thank you very, very much. Are people a bit miffed?
Very good morning to you, Patrick. Well, the Passport Office says that there is unprecedented demand. And in some ways, yes, there is, for two problems, really. The first is that, of course, over lockdown, for the majority of that time, we weren't even legally allowed to go abroad. So most of us put off having to renew our passports. The second problem is, when we were in the European Union, you could travel to anywhere in Schengen right up until the expiry date on your passport. All of that changed when we left. Right now, let's say if you wanted to hop over to France this weekend, well, you need at least 3 months on your passport. Well, people are realising as they get ready, let's say for half term coming up in a few weeks, or even the school summer holidays, they're realising that their passport has either expired or they don't have enough leeway on it, which means they'll actually be able to go into those countries. So there's suddenly this huge surge of people trying to get their passports, and some of the people I've spoken to this morning are having a real headache in doing so. The normal way you'd apply costs £75, 50 pence. But it's going to take up to 10 weeks. That's the best estimate that the Passport Office are saying for you to get your passport back. So a lot of the people here instead have opted for the 1 week fast track system. Well, that might be a bit of relief. If your holiday's in 2 weeks' time, you think, oh, I can just pay double the price, get my passport, and I'll have it in time for my holiday. Only if you can get an appointment. This morning I spoke to one man who's come from Swansea to come to London for an appointment. A couple this morning that I spoke to have spent over £2,000 on their first holiday to go to Portugal, on a couple's holiday. They're really looking forward to it. They've got one of these passport issues. His wife's passport's going to expire. To get an appointment, they're having to go to Glasgow. So really, really difficult. Now, the Passport Office say the quickest, the easiest, the cheapest way for you to do it is online, but you have got that lengthy wait. They say people from working home, that's not the thing that's causing the delay. Instead, it's the fact that this surge. And when I asked them, well, could you not have anticipated that there would be this surge? I didn't get a response.
Goodness me. Rosie, thank you very much. Really enlightening report, that. Rosie, right from outside the Passport Office. I've had some terrible times in that Passport Office, actually. There was one time that my friend's toddler ripped a page out of my passport. Good for him, obviously, we still get on. And, yeah, I had to go there and basically beg them to do, you know, a next-day passport thing. It sets you back a few quid. Another friend of mine, yeah, absolutely, a little bit of lack of pre-planning, don't get me wrong, but realised that her passport was expired, they'd had a holiday booked, and, yeah, a classic one. They could go to Northern Ireland, I think they could go to Glasgow to try and get a passport. They couldn't nip round the corner in London and get one. I can't help but wonder, though, whether there's a bit of lack of pre-planning here from our government on this issue. I believe the passports are manufactured in France. Well, maybe if they were manufactured in the UK, then we could get them out and about to people just a little bit quicker. But, there you go. Anyway, not exactly taking back control, is it? But there we go. Former Transport Minister John Speller joins me now. John, your thoughts on all of this, please? What do you think?
Well, you're absolutely right. And we fought this at the time when they were transferring the printing of passports from Gateshead in the northeast, not to France, but to a French company that's printing them in Poland. And we said at the time, you're creating long supply lines. But all of this, look, it's a bit like the Vehicle Licensing Agency as well, where truck drivers can't get their licenses back. People pass their tests and they can't get them. Here, it was quite obvious. If they'd had a drop in the number of applications, there was going to be a surge. And they haven't even increased their numbers at the call centre, also, by the way, owned by a French company. It's truly extraordinary, and it shows there's no grip. And of course, where does a lot of this come back to? Once again, as with visas, it's the Home Office again. No grip from the minister.
OK.
Frankly, don't seem to have a clue.
I mean, I can wonder what this French company's call centres like 2-hour breaks for lunch, red wine over there. But of course, these are just the lazy tropes that I like to wheel out. At least they're not on strike. But there we are. But seriously, is there a different alternative angle on this, John? You know, OK, it's very inconvenient for people, but now we might have to holiday at home. Some of those red wall seats could see an upsurge. You could see people flocking to sunny Skegness.
No, but look, obviously there has been a big increase in people on staycations, and that's very good for British holiday venues. But at the same time, many people also, of course, now that countries are opening up, want to go and visit their relatives in those countries as well. Also, I've got cases where people, need to get a passport because a member of their family abroad has been taken seriously ill. What we need is grip. I mean, now, in the paper today, they say they asked or told the French telephone company to actually increase its numbers. Why weren't they doing this months ago when this should have been anticipated? Same with the question about travelling to Europe and needing 6 months on your passport. Why didn't they do a big advertising campaign? They would also have the records knowing when people's passports were expiring. Why didn't they write to them saying you need to do this if you want to go to Europe? A bit of planning towards the future would actually have saved the government a lot of money, but also saves people so much inconvenience. Quite frankly, this lot don't seem to be able to run anything.
OK, John, look, thank you very, very much. Just quickly, do you care less about Partygate now the Labour leader's been embroiled in it?
Well, you see, I mean, I think you're misunderstanding why so many people are really deep and hurt and angry by this. People who couldn't go and visit their relatives in hospital, sometimes even couldn't be with them when they were dying. Had relatives in care homes who probably had dementia, felt abandoned and alone. And quite frankly, I don't think sort of smart aleck comments from commentators in London really understands how deeply offended those people feel by the way that the people who are making the rules in Downing Street actually ignored them.
OK, I mean, there does appear to be a video of Keir Starmer doing something similar, but we'll obviously have to wait and see for a...
Sorry. I really think you do just trying to set up a smoke screen to cover up what the government was up to isn't going to wash with the public. Many of those, I said, who were personally affected still feel really aggrieved by that and really are offended by the way government was behaving. Throwing up a smoke screen isn't going to wash. It's going to wash with them. Quite frankly, commentators and also the Tory ministers should abandon this. It won't wash with the public.
Yeah, all right. So OK, the Labour leader gets caught. But we can't talk about that though. Well, look, I enjoy our back and forth, John. I do enjoy our back and forth. So please do come back on. Thank you very much for always making the time for us. All right, former Transport Minister John Speller there. Rearguard action, this, isn't it? OK, the Labour leader's been caught in it. Well, the public won't care about that. I think we'll just leave it out. You're not allowed to talk about it. I mean, come on, have a day off. Right, after the break, the PM wants to cut back childcare costs by reducing the toddler-to-staff ratio at nurseries. But is this going to do anything? I'll ask an expert after these headlines with Rihanna.
Thanks, Patrick. 11:34, your top stories from the GB newsroom. A 28-year-old man's been charged with the murders of 4 people in southeast London. Joshua Jacks is accused of killing 3 generations of the same family. 64-year-old NHS worker Donat Hill and her 59-year-old partner Denton Burke were stabbed in their home in Bermondsey on Monday. Her daughter Tanisha Foria-Kufo and granddaughter Samantha Drummonds were also attacked. Jacques is due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court this morning. A man has appeared in court accused of murdering mother of two Katie Kenyon, who disappeared from Burnley last Friday. More than 60 specialist police officers have been scouring an area in East Lancashire. 50-year-old Andrew Burfield has been remanded in custody and will appear at Preston Crown Court tomorrow. Labour's calling for the suspension of a Conservative MP accused of watching porn in the House of Commons. The government chief whip has launched an investigation after allegations about the unnamed member were raised during a meeting of Tory MPs. Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary Jonathan Ashworth says the culture needs to change.
It's shocking, but for me it's also utterly depressing, because that building over there, that should be the arena, and it actually is still the arena where the big questions of the day are thrashed out, like this cost of living crisis and the fact that pensioners are really struggling. We should be talking about those issues in that building. And there is so much misogyny, sexism, bullying. We're hearing so many complaints. The culture has got to change.
TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. It's back to Patrick and to the point in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, hello everybody. It's 11:38, it's about to go 11:39 to be precise, and this is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, live on your TV, online and radio this morning. Now, Chancellor Rishi Sunak has launched a £25 million fraud squad to track down those who have swindled the Treasury of billions in COVID loan scams. Some people saw the pandemic and saw a business opportunity, frankly. In fact, over £4.9 billion worth of government loans have now been lost to fraud, smuggled out of the UK in suitcases, or squandered on luxuries, according to the Home Office. Not sure if you squander anything on luxuries, really, but there we go. So what happens if the fraud squad fails? Who will be expected to pick up the pieces left by clearly too easily exploited loopholes? Well, joining us now is the man himself. It's Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor. Shocking stuff. There's massive amounts of money swindled out the public purse, I suppose, is it?
It is indeed shocking, Patrick. The numbers are absolutely huge. Think back to the beginning of lockdown, the government panicked, we were shutting down the economy. GDP, the size of the economy, was falling off a cliff, the biggest decline in 300 years. What did the Treasury do? They panicked and they just wanted to get money out the door. And when you get money out the door quickly, that means a lot of it gets wasted. The Treasury handed out £47 billion in COVID bounce-back loans and other business support. That's 47,000 million. It's 47 and 9 zeros, right? Big money. It's more than we spend on defence, right?
Gosh.
Now, out of that money, you mentioned the 4.9 billion. They've admitted that they don't know where it went, right? But the estimate is, and the Public Accounts Committee have been looking at this, that's a cross-party group of MPs in the Commons that scrutinises what the Treasury does. They're a very, very influential committee. They reckon that out of that 47 billion, at least 17 billion won't be returned to the Treasury. Now, 17 billion quid, right? That's equivalent. If you had 17 billion quid, you could take 3 or 4p off the basic rate of income tax.
Really?
That's how much money we are talking about. So, you know, it's like, I talk about numbers all the time. Yeah. It's like, numbers, lots of zeros. But when you put it in that context, you could take 3 or 4p off the basic rate of income tax that we all pay if we go to work, if we're above the threshold, of course, because of the waste in these bounce-back loans.
So, were they too easily exploited?
Yes.
Right, there you go. Finally, so I was Liam Halligan there. But no, well, then this is the government's fault, I suppose, isn't it? Is that the way you look at it? This was too easily exploited, the government are to blame?
Yes, but...
OK.
Yes, because they tried to get money out the door so quickly and spent big on lockdown. But then we get into a whole metaphysical argument about was lockdown right, was lockdown not right, what would you or me have done? I mean, imagine if I was the Chancellor and you were Chief Secretary to the Treasury or something. What would we have done? We probably would have panicked, and we just need to get money out the door.
I'd have definitely panicked.
Because businesses are going down, right? You don't want... what the government was trying to do, and Sunak wrote and talked about it a lot at the time, they talked about trying to build a bridge from lockdown to the post-lockdown period. If we just let all of our businesses collapse, I mean, economic ruin, civic unrest. So they had to do something. I'm not saying this was easy, but the scale of the lockdown loans was so big, and the scale of the fraud is now so big that there are going to be a lot of red faces and a lot of red ink.
Hey, there you go.
Like
I like that one. Yeah. Thank you for just
use that.
chucking out, giving me that one for free. You know,
it's not free. It's 47 billion.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, there is another point, right? OK, so the government maybe were there for the taking when it came to this stuff, but the fact is, people took it, and it's quite a damning indictment of humanity in a way. Really, they saw this and thought, I'm going to nick that.
I mean, isn't it amazing? You and I will know many people who, in lockdown, made enormous sacrifices, went shopping for the neighbours. You know, we endured all kinds of grief, restrictions. There are people out there, they thought, I'm going to make a few quid out of this. I'm going to buy myself a Porsche. I'm going to buy myself a holiday home. I'm going to take money out of the country in cash, in suitcases. This stuff literally happens. There are all kinds of people in the world, Patrick, and not all of them are good.
No, and you will be on later, won't you?
I will, 1 p.m.
1 p.m? Hey, should we do it? You're on the money! Hey, there we go. Liam, thank you very, very much. Liam Halligan now, our economics and business editor. Off he goes. Right, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is looking to reduce staff to child ratios in nursery schools in order to help cut childcare costs in the year of the squeeze. Currently, the guidelines say that there must be 1 member of staff for every 4 children over 2 years old. Now, the father of at least 7 children apparently urged his MPs, to help reduce the cost of childcare in a meeting, with reports that he joked about he knew the expenses of childcare firsthand. Yeah, I bet he does. But sector organisations say the ratio change could be catastrophic and set back children's learning and development. So Juno Sullivan is the CEO of the London Early Years Foundation, who operates 39 nurseries across London, and joins me now. Thank you so much. Now, as far as I'm aware, I don't have any children, but I was staggered by some of my friends who do to learn about the sheer costs of childcare. It's extortionate, isn't it?
Well, this is a whole big subject. So it is very expensive because the government contribution to it is too small, and they keep quoting other parts of the world who are much more generous towards parents to actually balance out the cost to parents and the cost of running a decent nursery that gives good quality to children and looks after its staff. So it's a slight irony that we have to sort of hear this from the Prime Minister when I think in roughly the last time we looked at it, it was over £600 million shortfall in the cost of delivering to the cost of the contribution that the government gives towards early years care and education, which is never an issue for schools, by the way. So it's always like the nurseries are always being told that they can't have anything, but they never query how much it costs towards a school. So it's slightly, bitter pill to swallow at times.
I can understand that. Big element to it, child safety, OK? So if you've got fewer childminders, child carers, whatever, around the children, I suppose that's a concern, is it, do you think?
So there are two things. Child ratios are an important part of quality, and it's a structural, well-researched, hugely explored academic piece of work that shows that the fewer children to the more staff, the better the quality of the education, the support, the safety, and the well-being of children. Particularly if you think of a baby. Just think, you have one lap and two hips. Generally, that's a pretty good ratio. And so what that means is that the staff can spend time really engaging with the children and really looking after them. And some of these children are with us 10 hours a day. So that's the first thing. The second thing is there are no staff at the moment. We are really squeezed. My staff are tired. They stepped up during the pandemic. We ran nurseries for nurses and doctors. We kept the nurseries open. And the thanks we get from the government is, hey ho, you can squeeze a few more children in. It'll reduce, the fees by about £5, and we'll end up with poorer quality stuff with the children, more tired staff, fewer nurseries. And if you think of the contribution nurseries make to the GDP, and we enable people to work. I mean, I think keep forgetting all of that. If you don't have a decent nursery in a two-person economy, you can't actually deliver what we need now, which isn't surely to turn things around and actually make things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we had any of the money from your previous interview with Liam Halligan, we'd solve the problem of childcare like overnight, and the quality would be good, the staff would be paid better, and parents would be much more assured that they wouldn't have to pay quite the high proportion that they do. And that money has gone down the pan or away in suitcases.
Or away in suitcases, well, indeed, I suppose. I'll tell you what, actually, what would basic childcare set me back now if I did indeed have a little sprog?
You could be paying, it's slightly different pricing because we have higher ratios for babies. So we work with 3 babies to 1 member of staff. So you could be paying in some places up to about maybe $1,800 a month, especially in London where the costs are higher. We run a social enterprise nursery model. That's our model. So we don't have shareholders or anything like that. So every penny we have is allocated to children from higher need areas, so that we actually can try and balance that out. Because they're the children who really be hammered by this, because there's already fewer access for those children than the more average, sort of more affluent, more professional families who have more access. Like 1 in 10 have access to an outstanding nursery, as opposed to 1 in 30 children from poor neighbourhoods.
June, thank you very much. Can I ask you, June, sorry about this, but I'm a massive fan of your accent. Can I ask exactly where you're from?
I'm from Cork.
Cork, so there you go. I've got relatives in Cork.
I've lived here for nearly 40 years, so yeah. But yeah,
well, never lose it.
You can't take Cork out of the girl, really.
No, never lose it. That's right, June. Thank you very much, June O'Sullivan. There, the CEO of London Early Years Foundation, operates 39 nurseries across London. Just talking about the increase, I suppose, in childcare demands, whether or not we're going to have now more children per childminder, as it were, whether or not that's safe. Anyway, right, so let's take you through some of the headlines of the day that you may well have missed. A cracking way to finish off what has been a rip-roaring show. Now, the Central African Republic has approved Bitcoin as a legal tender. We should get Liam Halligan back in for this one. It is one of the world's poorest countries, but is rich in diamonds, gold and uranium. El Salvador became the first country to adopt Bitcoin as an official currency in September 2021, a move criticised by many economists, including the International Monetary Fund, which said it increased the risk of financial instability. Others have raised fears that cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin could make it easier for criminals to launder their money, and that they are environmentally damaging because they use so much electricity to generate. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to lie to you. I don't really get Bitcoin. I don't really understand what it's about. It just seems like a completely fictional currency. There were people shouting at their TVs now, calling me an idiot. Not for the first time, of course, but I just don't really get it. I just don't really understand the kind of process of Bitcoin or how it really became a massive thing. But anyway, there we go. To the US and in Minnesota over the weekend, a state Senate candidate was attempting to deliver a speech while in active labour. I mean, this is the way... Was it Stella Creasy who was in our parliament with the baby and it created the kind of thing? This is one step further, isn't it, than this? Active labour. So having to pause her speech for contractions. So I believe, hopefully we can... Oh, I hope more hear it than see it, but there we go. Anyway, go on, let's do it.
That means we can help achieve safe and stable communities, create economic opportunity and prosperity, and safeguard our civil and human rights, and strengthen our human and public infrastructure. Excuse me.
I mean, no, surely not, really. Does that need to happen? Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Anyway, hey, I'm a cynic. Maybe people think that's wonderful and lovely and all of that, but I think that's a desperate plea for attention. So, for our radio listeners, that was candidate Erin May Quaid, who was struggling to even stand. She should have been in hospital. She's in childcare. She's in childbirth. Anyway, let alone get her words out as her contractions took hold. She naturally, obviously, had to grab a microphone and do a speech so people could applaud. Some say this speech shows the strength that some women need to overcome their unique bodily challenges. Others say that it shows how society and the system refused to accommodate women's needs, as the debate was not postponed, despite her going into labour hours beforehand. Others may say, you're in labour, biff it off and have a child. But anyway, there we go. More than 200 state troopers at the Texas Department of Public Safety have been told to slim down by the end of the year, or they will be denied promotions, overtime payments, or even a position on the force itself. Yes, indeed, fat cops. Documents obtained by the Dallas Morning News show that men with a waist size of more than 40 inches, I'd be out of that, and women with a waist size of more than 35, bit sexist, tell you what, about that candidate, I'd have a few things to say about that, have been asked to shed the kilos and track their weight loss efforts or face serious consequences if they do. But I think that's fair enough. You know, there's nothing worse than a fat cop, is there? They come out of their car, you know, the old stereotypes of eating donuts. You can see it in Texas from a mile off, can't you, as well? You know, they've got some fried chicken on the go or whatever, and they're there, and you think, you're not going to be able to run after anyone, are you? You know, those kind of clips of someone just say, hey, stop there. No, you just walk away from them and they waddle after you. No, you need to have... They need to be a bit slimmer, they need to be a bit more in shape, in my opinion. Although maybe some would say that's what a gun's for. You know. A UN report on Tuesday called for urgent action to avert a sand crisis, including a ban on beach extraction, as demand surges to 50 billion tonnes a year amid population growth and urbanisation. Sand is the most exploited natural resource in the world, apparently, after water, but its use is largely ungoverned, meaning we are consuming it faster than it can be replaced by geological processes that take hundreds of thousands of years. Interesting, though, with sand, isn't it? Because you'd find currently a lot of Labour MPs burying their heads in it over the beer gate that we've got at the moment with Labour, haven't we, with Keir Starmer. Really interesting stuff there. We had the Shadow Transport Minister on there, John Speller. This is all just a smokescreen. It's a smokescreen, former Shadow Transport Secretary. It's a smokescreen to detract away from what Boris Johnson is doing. No, it's not. It's a video of Keir Starmer appearing to break lockdown rules. That's that. Oh, he was just in between Zoom meetings. All right, well, if you break lockdown rules in between Zoom meetings, you're still breaking lockdown rules, aren't you? I do wonder whether or not Keir Starmer regrets going so large on this now, doesn't he? Because actually, surely he has to be served the same receipts as Boris. Surely this has to be investigated in the same way. And what's fascinating is that as yet, because we haven't seen the total, well, of all of it, really, the Sue Gray report, but there actually appears to be an invite to this Keir Starmer event that calls it a social. Now, obviously, there was a rule, wasn't there, banning social gatherings. Also, apparently, it was referred to as being a greasy night, so a bit of a booze up. All right, OK, that seems to be slightly incriminating, doesn't it? I just wonder, where's Gary Neville on this? Has anyone heard from Gary? Anyone seen a tweet from Gary Neville about the utterly shameful nature of the way that the Labour Party has potentially been breaking the lockdown rules? And their other argument is, well, Boris was the one who made the rules. We're all equal before the law, ladies and gentlemen. Going to be fascinating to see how this one plays out. I, for one, cannot wait. What I do hope, though, is that it finally draws a line under this ridiculous Partygate situation. Maybe they just call it 1-1 and we all go home with a score draw. Right, a teaser trailer for the new Marvel film Thor, Love and Thunder came out this past week and has delighted most, but not all, fans. Some are outraged, I tell you, that Thor has seemingly lost the weight he'd gained at the end of Avengers Endgame, accusing the studio of fat phobia. In the trailer, a slightly rotund Thor can be seen exercising in a cave before proudly unveiling his new ripped bod to others in his crew. But Fat Thor, as he was known at the end of the last film, was so popular that an online petition has already kicked off to restore the God of Thunder to his former glory. Well, there we are. Anyway, what do you make of that? I find that a little bit sad. I mean, it is basically a film that's almost entirely made up of CGI and mythical kind of wizarding characters, isn't it, really? So I suspect maybe they're not trying to virtue signal too much about fat-shaming. But there we are. Right, OK, look, that's it from us here at To The Point. Thank you very much, everyone who's been getting in touch. I'm just going to finish the show with one or two of your views, just to round it off. Yes, please keep going with Beergate, says Ken. He says it's about time that they had it right. Stop blaming government for paying too little into childcare. That's from Jane. And a lot of people as well saying, hey, if your passport runs out, 500,000 of you currently waiting for a new passport. Lots of you getting in touch to say it's personal responsibility to look after the date on your passport. And yes, I think you could possibly agree with that. Right, yes, that is it from me here at To The Point. Don't go away, because up next is the briefing with the wonderful Gloria De Piera. So stay tuned. I'll see you tomorrow, people.
Hello, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Another dry day for the vast majority today. Not particularly sunny. There is quite a lot of cloud around, but many places bright and fine. The thickest cloud across eastern England and northern Scotland. High pressure is sitting right across the UK and will bring the vast majority another dry day. But the cloud is thick in places, particularly over northern Scotland, where we could just have one or two showers. And it's quite a grey day for much of Yorkshire, down into the Midlands and East Anglia. It'll take a while before that cloud starts to break up. Elsewhere, we've got quite a lot of cloud, but there's still some brightness coming through, some hazy sunshine for Wales, southern parts of England, the far north of England, southern Scotland. And if we do get some brightness, temperatures 15, 16, maybe 17, possibly 18 across the south, but feeling quite cold where that cloud persists over eastern England and northern Scotland. Still one or two showers to come across the Northern Isles through this evening, but they should tend to fade. And for most, it's going to be a dry night, a very small chance of a shower across the southeast. Clear skies for many, and temperatures will again be dropping well down into single figures. In rural spots over Northern Ireland, Northern England, again, we could be a couple of degrees below freezing to start Friday. So another chilly start and another fairly cloudy day over parts of eastern England, Lincolnshire and East Anglia in particular, but also across the southeast.